Good evening and welcome to another episode of Prime Focus, a spotlighting program that is run twice monthly that highlights issues of concern to individuals, families, and communities, bringing greater awareness and education with a view to improving the lot of many through anticipated positive actions. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and we have a very exciting episode today, topic that we'll be looking at. And if you haven't already done so, reach out to your friends, let them join us because tonight is really, really special. I know I'm fond of saying that, but tonight is special because I have a couple, an amazing couple with us tonight. So thank you again for joining us on Prime Focus. And tonight's episode, I'm going to be looking at something very exciting. What is it? We're going to be talking about building a stronger marriage, a stronger marriage. When we look around us, many people are trying to shy away from it. People are struggling. Sometimes we don't talk about it. So I've got some experts in here who are going to speak. They will not call themselves experts. They're very just practical, down to earth people. Um, but before we do that, I thought I should also let you know that this is a channel you don't want to be missing the episodes we talk about. So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so and encourage your friends to do the same. I'm going to start by introducing our speakers today, the couple. I'm going to start with Dr. Soji Abiona, and then after that, I will invite his wife, Dr. Norva Abiona, as well to come in. So I'm going to start with an electronic introduction of Dr. Soji.
Dr. Soji Abiona, also known as the Singing Doctor, is a senior consultant pediatrician who specializes in developmental pediatrics and has an interest in clinical genetics. He's an international worship leader who has a passion for leading God's people into His presence. He firmly believes that we should always approach God with gratitude and worship. He's a singer-songwriter who has written songs such as I Will Bless Your Name and God of the Atom. He also has a young but growing YouTube channel where he continues to share his love for worship. Dr. Soji has ministered internationally in person and online, leading worship to very diverse and multicultural audiences, including in the UK, US, Venezuela, the African continent, and the Caribbean. He has also taught groups of individuals on the practical and impactful way in which worship can usher people into the throne room of the living God. As a worship leader, he's always excited and expectant when called upon to take people into the presence of the living God through the power of the Holy Spirit. Without fail, this has led to the Lord showing up during personal and corporate times of worship. Dr. Soji is also part of the worship team at his local church. In his personal life, Dr. Soji is a husband of Dr. Norva Abiona. They have 3 beautiful daughters. Together, Dr. Soji and Norva have been supporting individuals and couples in the area of worship and relationship development. They have imparted in great depth to audiences in person, via television and online virtually on both topics. Dr. Soji and Norva run workshops and offer coaching. They are also the creators of the forthcoming training Marriage Unveiled, 10 Keys to Unlocking God's Plan for Lasting Love and Real Fulfillment in Your Marriage. This in-depth teaching is all about revealing biblical truths for a successful and fulfilling marriage.
Dr. Norva Semoy Abiona, D.D., is an award-winning relationship and business coach with an apostolic stance. She has authored 3 books, including the #1 international bestseller, Time to Go. Dr. Norva is the CEO and founder of Real Fulfillment International, the umbrella company for the Warrior Queen movement that includes wifepreneurs, the Wise Wife Community, and My Choice Marriage. Known as the relationship change catalyst, Dr. Norva supports others with business life balance and harmony, enhancing your marriage, help for abusive marriages, accountability that works, learning how to triumph over life difficulties and trauma. Dr. Norva is proud to be a Trinidadian. She migrated to the UK in 2000 to escape from her abusive ex-husband. Since then, she has spent over 20 years teaching and acting as a facilitator to help resolve conflicts, restore broken relationships, and in so doing, transforming homes and lives. Dr. Norva has been happily married to her amazing Nigerian husband, Dr. Soji Abiona, for over 18 years. Together, they are raising their 3 ambition-driven daughters. She says that faith is an integral part of her life and accomplishments.
Well. Thank you so much, Dr. Soji and Dr. Norva, for joining us on Prime Focus tonight. I'm really excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. Yes, excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, right. This I know is going to be very exciting. Well, many people are celebrating Valentine's Day, and I thought, okay, why don't we do something that helps people on a more serious level? And so I'm going to start by asking a question here about this whole public display of affection. Is it something that is just seasonal? Is it something that should be carried out all the time? Is it something you encourage? Is it helpful in healthy, loving relationships?
Yeah.
You want to go?
Yes, I'll go. Well, I suppose it depends on what you mean by, a public display of affection, because I suppose a lot of people will think that it's the physical side of things. So we can
Right.
address that first. But also there's displays of affection that are not physical. It may be what you say about your spouse. It may be the way you address your spouse in public. It may be, how you boast about your spouse or otherwise, as the case may be. But in dealing with the first more common definition, it really should be a symptom, if you allow me to use a medical term, of what is going on in the relationship a lot of times. So it depends on the context. So in the cultural context in which we are in, a lot of us who live in the West, and some who also don't live in the West, but in a culture which that is part of the culture, to be expressive in that way, then it is not something to be discouraged as such, and it can be an indicator that a marriage is healthy. There are those who may have public displays of affection, but the marriage isn't healthy. So it can be taken both ways. And what I was saying earlier also about the fact that what you say is also important. How you talk about your spouse when they're not there can be a public display of affection as well.
Yeah. That's true. And I mean, just to add to it, the answer to your question, of course, is yes. As my husband said, if you are happy at home and you are loving at home in terms of expressing the way you feel about this person, so you kiss, you hug, you laugh a lot, then when you're out, you would end up kissing, you would end up laughing, you would end up touching that person because that's natural for you. There are people who they're fakers, and so they're not happy at home at all, but then in public they try to fake it. And sometimes if you look long and hard enough, you could tell that it's fake. Or sadly, with hidden cameras and all sort of things around, sometimes some bit of information comes forward that shows that all is not all is not well in Tinseltown. So you have to you can't just rely on that to know if people are happy, but people that are happy should not be afraid to display that. And for us as Christians, I think many times in some Christians, or I should say, because we're evangelical, so in the Pentecostal settings, there are some places where you could see it displayed more than others. And then there are others for different reasons people don't do it. So some people feel that it's not allowed and they've never asked. And some people, they come into a culture and it seems as though nobody does it here, so they don't do it. I mean, in fact, most of the churches that we've ever been to, we don't even look or care what people do. We just do us. So, and we've had people comment on it. In fact, we've had people tell us get a room. We've had people say, "Oh, it's so nice and refreshing to see." So people take it in different ways. It's always interesting when people who are married, you could tell that the way that they're reacting is not that they're happy about it, as though this should not be encouraged. And so to me, that tells about what either they believe or what is happening in their relationship. Yeah. So I think if you're happy, then let people know you're happy, because you want other young people to get married and be happy as well. And so let them see what happiness looks like. Yeah.
I like that. Let them see what it looks like. Awesome. Thank you both, Dr. Soji and Dr. Norva, for that. Just following on from that particular point there, we often talk about or hear about love languages. Sometimes you will see some men who are like, I don't know what she wants. I've given her everything. She has a house. She's got a car. What else does she want? Why is she not happy? And things like that. What exactly are these? What exactly are these love languages that we talk about? And is it different from men and women? Because I think the men are the ones who need a bit more schooling in that.
I suppose if we go back a little bit, just to add context, because love languages was a concept developed by a writer called Gary Chapman quite a few years ago. And really, his research led him to believe that all human beings have 5 ways in which they can receive love. And those 5 ways have then been sort of identified as languages as such, so that if someone is speaking that language, then you can understand that they are speaking love to you. So just to recount what those are, I'm going to help you here, baby. So one is acts of service, which is the things that you do that make someone appreciate that you're thinking about them and you appreciate them. For guys, for example, it may be that you decide to wash up, do the chores around the house without being asked. So that's acts of service. And some spouses can feel that he loves me because he's doing that. Then there is quality time. Yes, so setting aside time to spend with your spouse, that is exclusive to them, no phones, and you taking that time out, and that can communicate love for that particular spouse. One can be gifts. I was going to say on surprises, but
inside joke.
Yes. Gifts, some people can perceive love in that way, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be a car or a boat or a house, but something that identifies thoughtfulness. And a fourth one can be, is that quality time as well? A fourth one can be physical touch. Thank you. So physical touch, so sort of kind of that closeness, and it doesn't have to be sex either. I'm sure we'll cover that at some point today. But it doesn't have to be sex. It can be a touch. It can be a squeeze, a hug, that kind of thing. Some people perceive love in that way. And there's one more. Let me see.
Are you sure you mentioned quality time?
Yeah, I mentioned quality time. Words of affirmation. How could I forget?
Yes.
And that happens to be mine.
Yeah. See, he gets enough of it.
And it's those kind of things that you say to your spouse that affirms them, that makes them know that they are loved, that they are valued, that they are cared for. So that those are the 5 the 5 love languages, as it were. And as I said, speaking the love language of your spouse actually communicates love. And really, there is no sort of men do this or women do a particular love language. it's very much a function or a result of how you're brought up, what your character is, what the experiences you've had in life, good and bad. Those are the things that form, your love languages. I mean, people may think, oh, the love language of a man could be physical touch, but no, some men, it's not their love language. It could be, words of affirmation, as it is for some men like me. So, but it's a good thing to touch on, because it's so important. If you're not speaking the language of your spouse, you can't understand each other. They can't understand that you love them, and yeah, so that can be a problem if not identified early in a relationship.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you. Yeah.
sorry,
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Dr.
yeah, I
Norva.
was going to say it makes me think about the golden rule and what we teach as the platinum rule, because the golden rule is do unto others as you want to be done unto you. But we say for the platinum rule is do unto others as they would like to get done. So you don't do things because you like it. And this is the problem sometimes with the way we express love. If you think that you like bubblegum, you're giving bubblegum to everybody. Really, you understand? Or you think I like cleaning up, so every time you get around somebody, you're cleaning up for them. And then you take it into your marriage and you can't understand why your spouse isn't appreciating all that you're doing. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. You have to really begin to figure out, and you figure out by asking questions and getting closer to the person, what are the things that float your boat, what makes you happy and excited, so that you don't waste your money buying things when they don't want that, or you don't keep touching the person up when they hate that you touch them. You understand? So figuring it out is good. And to me, there are two that people spend more time on. So even though there are 5 in total, there'll be 2 more dominant ones for Soji, and I have 2 as well. In fact, we have one that's similar. One in common, and then a different one for each of us. But sorry, go ahead when you finish.
Now, I was just going to say something that you raised about men being exasperated. I've bought this and she's not. That's because he doesn't know her love language. So if he thinks that because his love language is gifts, and he showers her with gifts, then she's not going to be satisfied by that. He needs to know actually her love language may be words of affirmation. It may be that she wants to hear from him, I love you, baby. I appreciate that you did that. Those kind of things.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people go by what they believe society is saying. So if you believe that a man is interested in physical touch and that's all he's interested in, that is what you would perceive in your mind. And then for men, they think that women like gifts. And so they're just buying flowers all the time. And it could make the woman so annoyed because like you're not understanding. And so this unmet expectation rises up in the relationship and it causes a lot of friction and issues, So getting to know that is important, and also not thinking that because this is what you assume based on what you've heard in the past.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for that. But Dr. Soji, you did tell us what one of your love languages was. What is Dr. Norva, your wife's love language? If you can let us know.
Yes, quality time.
Quality time.
Okay. Yeah, that's her main love language. She loves it when I set everything, set things apart and really spend that time with her. Yeah.
Okay, so in spite of your busy medical professional work, you still have to make that time for her.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes. And he does a very good job at it.
Awesome. Right. Thank you so much for that explanation of what the love languages were. I want to come to practical. There may be people who will be watching or may watch later and will be asking, how do I build a loving relationship. Yes, I know we're talking about building strong marriages, but whether towards it or maybe I don't feel like the love is there, but particularly for people who are premarital, maybe looking ahead, or people who don't see what's all this thing about marriage. I mean, the statistics is showing that it's actually going down. So why should somebody be interested in this? So my question to both of you is, what are some practical ways to build a loving relationship?
Right. That's one of the things that we teach, and it's born out of reading a lot about this, but actually living it, as a couple. And as you mentioned earlier, we have been married for over 18 years, um, and I think we've come up with 15, really fundamental factors and topics which, as a couple, one needs to deal with, and to to make sure those are rock solid foundations in order to build, loving relationships. And the first one really is about being friends. It sounds really basic, but actually, it's very, very important, because if you think about the friendships that you have, so we're talking about solid friendships. You have friendship where people are not judging you, where they take you for who you are. You can share with them, all aspects of what might be secrets and issues like that. So building that solid foundation of friendship is so important. And it's actually interesting that when not just the other day, there was a couple that had been married for about over 70 years. And they were people asked them, so what's the secret to your to the longevity? And it was clear that they were still very much in love. And they said we were friends. And that is so important, and not to be ignored. That's a very key one that we actually often start with.
And the next one I would say is love. And most people think, well, love should come first. But no matter how much you say you love somebody, if you're not friends with them, it wouldn't last long. And so the love leads to the commitment. And so we put love and commitment into one, because when you love somebody, you're willing to go the extra mile for them. You're willing to do things that you wouldn't do for other people. And the degree and depth of love that you have for them would cause you to do more things for one than somebody else.
The third one that we often teach is about communication, and that is so key. The fact that if you imagine, for those who are just going into marriage, just imagine that both of you didn't grow up in the same homes. You've had a variety of different experiences, and now you are going to be living under the same roof. The first part of fall in love and rosy eyed and all of that, sweet as those are, the fact will come that when you're actually living under the same roof, you would need to communicate. Your wife or your husband cannot read your mind. You will need to be explicit about how you feel, what your values are, and even before you get married. And this is the value that there is and should be placed in premarital preparation. Marriage is not something that you should go into light go into it lightly. And I suppose we'll come into that talk about it a little bit more later on. But actually, communication is one of the key bedrocks of a good, solid, loving relationship. And it's not just about talking about the things that you agree on. It's also talking about the things that you don't perhaps agree on, and you won't actually know them until you actually communicate about those things. So being a good communicator is is important. And being a good communicator is not just what you say, is actually how you listen. Active listening is one of the other things that we talk about. Not just waiting for your turn to speak, but actually processing what your spouse or what your spouse is saying before you then talk about what's your view, what's your opinion.
In fact, what's your view or opinion on something that you have in your mind and you're ignoring what the person is telling you now? So you have to be careful, and that's why good communication is important. The next thing that we talk about is intimacy. And plenty of times people think intimacy and sex is one and the same, but actually it's not. Because when you are intimate with somebody, as somebody puts it, into me you see, you begin to know different aspects about that person that lights their fire, and they begin to know about you. So what is it that you think about when it comes to your intellect, your education? What drives you financially? What is your thoughts spiritually? When you understand that the depths of the person's thinking when it comes to those things, then you know that your intimacy is growing, because you become more curious and more in love with them the more you know about all of these different areas of their life.
Yeah. The next one is romance, and I think this is particularly after this time of the year, but it's not something to be taken lightly. I would say as a guy, we often seem to be better at it before marriage than after marriage, and that's a bad idea. It's something you want to maintain, and romance is not just from guy to the girl, but also the other way around as well. That's also a good thing that works. It's spending those little times, those little touches, those little preparations. If a love language is receiving gifts, you can send her flowers, write little notes. We used to like put post-it notes in each other's bags, and just to we know that you're going to be seeing that during the day, or sending our favorite bar,
Yeah.
nut bar, and she sees that and she thinks he's thinking about me.
Yeah.
So that those little things that you can do to keep the fire burning, and romance also as part of preparing for that intimacy that you also will have with your spouse. But it's those little things that you can do to keep the fire burning.
Yeah, and the next thing is passion, and passion is a bit broad, and
Yeah.
sometimes people only think about be passionate for your spouse, but you have to build passion for something in order to know how to express that you're passionate about your spouse. Because if you're just trying to do it with somebody and you have no context or understanding of what it means to be passionate about something, then you fail quickly. So if you're passionate about knitting, or you're passionate about I don't know, some people passionate about a television program, because of the way that you respond to those sort of things. If you begin to take some notes about how you act with that, then you should realize that's the kind of passion that you need to have for your marriage as well. You need to be focused when you're with that person. You need to express to them how you feel. You need to let them know what about them you fell in love with in the first place, and why you're still in love with them. You don't wait for them to ask you. You find ways and means. You get creative. How do I express to you my passion? What do I do that make you blush and make you realize, like, listen, this passion that I have for you, you are going to be as passionate for me as I am for you by the time I'm finished talking to you. So those are the things you have to think about.
And the next one is sex.
I was about to say yippee. Yeah.
Building a loving relationship. This is one of the key areas as well. And it's not just the mechanical act. It's realizing that this is a gift that God has given us as a couple. And we subscribe to the biblical view that sex is within a marriage between a man and a woman. And so in that context, actually it goes far beyond just the physical act. The Bible talks in Genesis, no less. Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And the only way you can really become one flesh is through sex. So it's even it's a spiritual experience, and so we should give priority where it is due to actually cultivate those sexual habits that are mutually pleasing to us and our spouse. And yeah, we shouldn't Christians have a way of kind of downgrading the importance of sex. Actually, it is important to God. That's why he created us in the way that he has. And so it is important in our relationship as well.
And again, if you think about the way that we have been taught to think about sex, if we're not careful in the Christian settings, we begin to look at it as dirty. And so even though you're married, it's almost like you're doing something that is wrong.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not something that you do in public. Of course not. But it is something that should be exciting for both of you. The sad thing is that couples that are looking at us, many of them, they one might enjoy it more than the other. And if one person really feels like what they're getting in the bedroom in terms of sex, they absolutely don't enjoy it, they despise it, they hate it, or whatever, then it might lead them to not be curious to know, is there a better way, but to find ways of not doing it. And so how do we in the church address that? I think it's important that it does get addressed, and leadership, being in churches where leadership address those things is very important, because it affects the family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can tell, we can go on and on and on, to our 15, and that's something we'll be very keen to share, with the audience. And we've come up with these 15 other things. With
well, 8 to 15, we'll share.
Yeah,
awesome. Okay, thank you so much for that. I was just so engrossed as he kept going from one to the other, and I'm like, okay, these are very important lessons, no matter your age and stage. Yes.
Absolutely.
I know I've touched a little bit on the question I asked before, but then with so much pressure that we find in society, for people, some maybe are waiting longer and things before they actually decide to tie the knot, and pressures on marriages, either work pressures, societal pressures, and so on and so forth, or things that people pick up from the social media spheres and all that, having so much pressure. What would you say? I know you've given us these 15 points already, but what would you say as being catalyst for positive relationships has helped you both? And what advice would you give to young couples in particular? And I mean, what is the secret for both of you? What has kept you all these years? I believe when I was looking at the statistics, it said in the UK, divorces take place on average after 12 years of marriage, and you've been married for more than 18 years. So by that test, you have passed. So what advice do you give to people who sometimes, I heard a preacher once say that love is blind, but marriage is an eye opener. What keeps you in it even after the eyes are opened?
Yeah. Well, wearing glasses. No. No, I was gonna say, even though we mentioned that there are 15, we only kind of went in depth into the first 7. If we, I suppose, should I call out quickly?
Yeah.
I'll call out quickly the others, and then answer your question. So if from 8 to 15, the others are we call them, we use the word wise in front of it. So wise living, how you build your home and stuff. Then we look at finances. Although we hear people say that finances is one of the big things that leads to divorce. Actually, when you really drill down, it's not finances as the problem, it's communication as the problem, because you're not talking about the finances. Your beliefs as well. Where are you on the same page? Parenting, your circle of influence, health, beauty, and personal development. So that's now people know all 15. So if you want to build a relationship that lasts, those things that we've said, all 15, they're important. However, the ones that we went in depth on, so when you're talking about friendships, you have to have that in the first place. The way society as a whole teach it, you want to try before you buy. So people they end up in bed kissing, fondling, and then lying. Especially church people now, they lie and pretend that they don't do a lot of these things, that they're doing everything by the book. And when you go down that kind of route, it means that you're already setting yourself up for problems, because you're starting off with a relationship that's built on lies. And the thing is, it's understandable that because you're falling in love with somebody, that you'll have the sexual attraction, but self-control comes in there, and finding ways to enjoy each other's company. So the friendship, so the talking about what you love, and letting the person know, and asking them what they love, and communicating and stuff. Those things would help you to be prepared, so that when you get into marriage, you continue because you start the way you mean to continue, it's easier for you to follow through with it. So if you really wanted to build and to last, you have to become friends who communicate, who love each other and communicate a lot. And communication, of course, spills over into intimacy, which spills over into sex. So all of those things will come into the marriage when you get into marriage. It's not something that you should be. Don't try to do the topsy-turvy thing before you get married. So you're having sex before you even are friends, and before you even understand the way the person thinks, because then you have a lot of issues when you get into the marriage because you didn't get to know certain things, so you have to be careful.
And as just to add to that is when we teach and when we coach about the 15 sort of, as you put it, building loving relationship, we never talk about sex first. We realize that actually there is a lot of building blocks really that lays that foundation. So there's a method in how we communicate that. And the other thing, just to add to what my wife has said, is us knowing our priorities, and our priorities being aligned are very, very important. What we value, which we communicated to each other even before we got married, what we value and how we arrange those values, they synchronize. So for us, when we have our orders of priority, we put God first. I know that my wife loves the Lord more than she loves me, but I know that I come next, after that, and then our family, and and then ministry, work, etc., etc. So having those values aligned has really helped us to build on those foundations, and also the ministry, the work that we do in the body of Christ, as as the terminology goes. We have a shared shared values, shared goals. So we're building together. I'm not pulling in one direction and she's pulling in the other. We're not doing identical things. I'm a doctor and she's a doctor of divinity. So we have different strengths, but we are using those strengths together to pull in the same direction.
And I think because of the shared values that we have, it's easy for us to share with other people. It was easy for you to kind of, I suppose, come into my world. It's easier for him to come into my world than for me to go and try to give somebody some medicine. So the just sharing from what is natural to us, it made it easier for us to do this together.
Awesome. I wanted to recap on three things you said. The friendship is so crucial. And I believe it's also said that if you build on that friendship, that doesn't only help you in the marriage, but even when you now go into a stage of empty nest, it still helps because you had a friendship. It wasn't just maybe kids that brought you together and things like that. Yes. And also the fact that you talked about maybe work you do, in your case, to do with mission work or ministry work. It means that you both had a passion, because I know you mentioned that you all, if one seemed to like it, the other didn't like it, then there could be issues there as well. Am I correct in saying that? Yes.
Somewhat. I mean, people could be passionate about different things when it comes to prayer, but if you love God and you want to see God's people grow and develop, even if you express it in different ways, the thing is that you're together on we love God. And so if you could find a way of merging the aspects that you are good at to help build that, then it works well.
Awesome. All right, we're going to just take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm just going to throw you spanning the works. I'm going to throw some questions about both of you, so please get ready for that, but you only have about 70 seconds.
Okay.
Focus is a twice-monthly live streaming program on YouTube, which highlights issues of concern to individuals, families, and relevant communities, bringing greater awareness and education, with a view to improving the lot of many through anticipated positive actions.
join in our conversations and subscribe to the channel too. Okay, I know you don't know where the questions are going to come from, so I'm just going to throw them very quickly. Norva, what do you like most about Dr. Soji?
Everything. Everything. But one of the things I spoke about all the time, and I still talk about it, is his eyes. He has, to me, the kindest eyes. And so it draws my attention. Even if I get really annoyed and I look at his eyes, I think, oh, you're so sweet. So, yeah, but everything about him just lights my fire. If I had the chance, I'd be going to work following him. You understand?
I like the way you said it, everything. That could be a song, everything. It was so loaded, you know. Thank you for that. Dr. Soji, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, which does Dr. Norva like?
Ooh, which does she like?
Which does she like?
Okay. Facebook, Instagram,
LinkedIn, Facebook. Okay. All right.
Do you want me to tell you why?
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, she is the Facebook queen. She can do research like to the nth degree. You know, friends abroad and things like that who she hasn't seen for years. All she needs is one syllable of their name. She can track them down on Facebook. Yeah. No, she's
awesome.
I'm glad you clarified that, because I was going to say, I don't think so, baby. But the point that you made is true. When it comes to connecting with people, that is it. Other than that, I don't have Facebook on my phone and stuff. But
the other one would be a close second for me anyway, is LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
She has a lot of connections through LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. To both of you, who likes singing in the shower?
Both of us.
Oh, both of you. Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that. Okay. Tea, coffee, or hot chocolate?
For me, it's tea.
Tea.
Okay.
For Norva,
ice.
Yeah. She.
Oh.
She chooses.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. Right. Norva, how many times does Dr. Soji brush his teeth in a day?
I think normally once he's going to work and stuff, twice. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's true. Twice. Yeah. Why don't you stay home? Would you brush your teeth more?
No.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I was crazy. I used to brush my teeth sometimes 15 times for the day. That was I don't do it no more. That's why
Dr. Soji, what is Dr. Norva's favorite show or movie? What does she like watching?
I can give you a category.
Okay.
And anything, if it has a tagline based on a true story.
Oh, okay.
Watch it.
All right.
Practically
Wonderful.
anything.
Okay.
Based on a true story.
Yeah.
Based on it. Okay. Anyone with a nickname?
Only when she was younger and she used to play football, she used to tell me they call her Novalachi.
Okay.
After a very seasoned footballer from the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, I did also have the nickname of Super Grover for because I used to do long jump, and I landed on a boy's head one time doing long jump, and so
oh my goodness.
I was called Super Grover. But did you ever have a nickname?
Not really.
No.
Okay. The last one. What don't you like? I know you said you like everything about him, but what makes you upset? What does he do? What does she do that make you upset?
Before he would take the time to think about things too long. He would say, I'm going to cool off 1 day, 2 days, he's still cooling off. I'm like, are you mad? You've left the fire on low and you have gone for 2 days and you think this pot would not boil. It is boiling. So he doesn't do that anymore. I think he realizes that approach wasn't working. So now we talk about it. Yeah.
I mean, well, for me, that you...
No, well, you can talk out for me. Yeah. There's something that annoys you. I know. Actually, Actually, think about it. Yeah, the time of the month, every time he's the one that wants me. Your attitude is changing. Carry on.
I mean,
I
it's
wouldn't say anything.
okay. This is something you never get taught about in marriage school, if you ever go to marriage school. And it's that there's a time of the month where um, females can be particularly touchy. And what I've learned over the years is to learn how to kind of navigate, certain times, about the way I approach certain things and my expectations around certain times of the month, because things can be, more explosive in terms, of the response I might get when I ask. All I ask is a simple question: is like, okay, all right, baby, all right. Well, is it that time? Okay, okay. So realizing actually that, and this has only come from knowing my wife, is a particular time of the month, things can be a little bit more emotional than other times of the month. And I think, just to add to that, not that I have a list.
Yeah, go ahead. Quote from your list.
Just to add to that, is actually interestingly one of the things that drew me to her. And I had to sort of also deal with that in myself, in how I was responding. And that is her assertiveness. I might say I'm a gentle guy, maybe. But Nova is very much a direct, yes, good word, a direct, and down the middle, straight down the line. I can mince my word, and admittedly, I think as a doctor, you learn to do that as well. You learn to lay it gently on the patient. You don't just hit them one with the bad news. You have to lay it gently. My wife, she's more direct. So, and that was one of the things that actually drew me to her. Somebody that will tell you as it is. I got news for you. That same attraction can be like something you don't want to air at particular time. So I had to actually, that's something, I had to deal with it myself, to ask God to help me, give me the grace to know how to deal with this, assertiveness. And it's assertion. It's actually telling me how she feels, and still giving me that space to be able to say my feelings, my opinions. But really, I needed to learn how to accept that my wife is an assertive individual.
Yeah. And I wanted to add that one of the things that I appreciated is that Soji did pick up that at a certain time of the month I act a certain way, because I didn't realize it, but I think love must have caused him to say there must be some reason why she's acting like this at this time. God, show me. And the Lord showed him. So yes, he's a lot more patient at that time. And when he pointed out, I think sometimes, sometimes I'm like, me, no way. And then 2 seconds,
I can tell you, like, I can say, like, almost to the clock and say, oh, have you checked? It's coming.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those the personal insights. They're very much appreciated by our audience. Just following on another point there, coming to conflict. My question is conflict unavoidable in a loving relationship? If yes, how can it be done? If not, how can such conflicts be resolved?
I think it's a good question. And when you look at the definition of conflict, it's almost kind of borders on violence, actually. And really, I suppose, at one level, what we're talking about is disagreements. But if disagreements are not dealt with, then they can, result in conflict. And, if there are certain tenets of a relationship that are not being built on, then you can go on to domestic violence and all of those kind of things, which is, absolutely not the right thing. But when you get to a level where you are intimate with someone, when you are communicating at such a high level, it is inevitable that there will be differences. There will be differences in approach. You've, as I mentioned earlier, we've come from totally different backgrounds. We are actually also cross-cultural. So there will be different approaches, different insights, but it's important to realize that actually you are both individuals, you're both adults. You can resolve this issue when you've built those particularly the top
Top
of the
7.
15, the top 7, where this is my friend, I am committed to this friend, this is my friend with benefits, we love each other. Always coming at it from that point of view, we believe any conflict can be resolved when you have those basic tenets already there. And it's then about how you practicalize how you're resolving the conflict, giving each other an opportunity to talk. And that's where communication is important. You are actually communicating, you're listening first, not just waiting to get that point, so that you can score and you can win. That is not the goal. A conflict or conflict resolution where one works out, sort of like, I have won and you have lost. You have both lost, because that conflict is not properly resolved. Where you want to end up when it comes to resolution is a win-win, where you've both come to see the value of a particular line of wisdom, and you follow it together lovingly. So all those areas that we've spoken about earlier actually build into instruments that you as a unique couple can make in terms of how you go about resolving conflict. I mean, one of the things that we do, just to give you a practical example, is when we have a difference of opinion, and it may be something that as we're both passionate about. We talk, we one of the things that we say is, I have a bone to pick with you. And something's there, we need to talk about this thing. And then we may start off, on different sides of the room, but we have consciously learned the value of moving towards each other, the value of body posture, body language, and using that to our effect. We actually end up making sure that by the time we're going to resolve this conflict, and as part of resolving that conflict, we're actually talking our own languages as well, our love languages, which is physical touch. So we touch each other to kind of reassure each other, actually, this conflict is not bigger than the love that we have for each other. So that those are some of the sort of tenets that we use to sort of help us resolve any conflicts that arise.
Yeah, and I'll add to that we could think that a person who is aggressive or shouts a lot and stuff, they are the ones who they're making matters worse. But actually, in many conflicts and stuff, that's not the biggest issue that you have. Somebody who is stonewalling you, so who is not allowing you to get your point across, that's detrimental. And then somebody, whether the person who decides they're not saying anything, whether they're being stonewalled or not, that is just as terrible. So if you don't have the opportunity to express yourself, to really say how you feel, whether the person says to you, oh, I'm going to take a cool off, and then the cool off never ends, and so you never get to say exactly how you felt, resentment begins to build up, and it begins to also affect your self-esteem, because if you feel like my words are not valued, my thoughts are not valued, this person doesn't respect my opinion and those sort of things, it does not, how can you have sex with this person and get more and more intimate with them when you feel as though the value that should be placed on me as your equal is not there? So I think it's important that we don't just think about aggressiveness. We understand that keeping silent, whether you feel forced to or you just naturally do it, you have to stay away from those things if you want to really resolve conflict.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. In the chat says, great conversation. Thank you for those of you who are also connecting with us. You can send your comments, you can send your questions as well, even if they are not addressed here. We can send them over to Drs. Soji and Dr. Norva, and they can have a look at it. But I know they'll also talk about the program that they have in a few minutes as we gradually come to a close here. There's so much to talk about that I'm just surprised 60 minutes has gone so quickly. But thank you again for all the things you've shared here. You've already touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to pick it up. Cross-cultural, today we find many relationships, especially not just in the West, but where people in the past, maybe I want to marry from my village or my town or my country, those sort of things are sort of dissipating a little bit. So, and for people who feel they can't see beyond their nationality or their own culture, what can you speak to such people about? Because both of you always use one from Trinidad and Tobago and then one from Nigeria, UK. So what do you say to people like that?
I think people who have a problem with that, the first thing I would say is kind of grow up, get a life. Really, in that, if you
That's a direct speaking, I mean.
yeah, that's the thing he was warning about. Many times the things that stop us from getting to know people in other cultures and stuff is what we've been told by our family, who some of them they've never even gotten to know people, or they've had one bad experience, or they've heard a cousin, auntie, uncle, friend say that they had a bad experience with somebody outside of the village. And so if you go by that, then you've closed yourself off to most of the world, because most of the world don't live in your area. If you only decide I'm going to just stick with people that I know and what we know, it's almost like you're saying that this person has to think, know, and behave in a way that I want or expect them to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case, because you all would, well, you all should be from different families anyway. So you would have a difference in opinion. You would have expectations that come from different mindsets.
Yes.
The thing about when you go into other cultures is that you begin to learn more. You begin to hear about things, and some things you appreciate, some things you may not, but you begin to learn so much more and realize that there is more to life for you to grow, to learn, and to understand from other people, and to even fall in love with.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something that draws you to
Yeah.
somebody from another culture. When I was very young, before I even could think about people in other countries, when I heard music from Africa, I literally felt as though it was calling me home. Every time I hear the African beat, there was something about it that always moved me. I didn't think I was going to marry somebody because of that, but hearing the music and everything, even now, the way it makes me feel, and of course, hearing the music and being in the arms of an African man, what can I say? It's yeah. Sorry, carry on.
I mean, just to add to that is that you know, knowledge is power, as they say. I mean, just as Nova was sharing an experience about the African drums and that kind of thing, which I do play the African drums. By the way.
Oh yes, he does.
It reminded me actually that when I went, I was partly brought up spiritually in a Caribbean church, and secretly in my mind I used to say, I don't want to marry her.
Do it too direct.
Yeah, well, no, it was just it didn't sort of float my boat at that time, as they say.
He was young.
And it's interesting, as God will have it. When I got to know my wife, I rearranged my priorities. I got to know the individual, and I fell in love with the individual. And then it was then on me to go and look, go and read. I did my sort of fact-finding mission to the Caribbean. I wanted to go and find out, what am I marrying into? The culture, the people, the history, which are all very fascinating. I mean, there are glaring differences between the typical Nigerian and the typical Trinidadian. But I embraced those differences, and we are bringing up our children in the context of those differences to appreciate, the diversity, of cultures. And if our children can appreciate, the diversity in the culture that they come from, they're going to appreciate other cultures as well.
Exactly.
So it's I would say, yes, it's to be encouraged. Open your mind in that sense, but also going into it, doing your homework as it were, to find out about the culture of the person that you've fallen in love with. I think that's also important.
And let me just
Awesome.
add one other quick thing to it. We're not just talking about, because we're Nigerian Caribbean, but also going outside of the race
Yeah,
is, I would encourage that as well. If my children come and tell me they're going to get married to anybody from any other culture, it's just getting to know the family. The things that will be important to us
yeah,
is, does this person, do they love God? How do they feel about that? Do we
yeah,
have shared values when it comes to that? Because I wouldn't want for my children to marry somebody who is of the same race, but they're serving Satan. Like, I'm like, no, I don't care how chocolate you look. Yeah, no, you understand? So we have to kind of get away and from the whole cultural thing sometimes, and really get to what is at the heart of
yeah,
what we believe and what we stand for.
absolutely.
Thank you for adding that, because I think that would release some people from prison. Sometimes maybe. Yeah, because sometimes, especially when you're looking generationally, maybe the parent from a certain traditional background or viewpoint cannot see beyond those colors. And I think, in a sense, that could be racism in
It
itself.
is,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So well, thank you so much for opening up on these points here. I'm just going to throw in a very final one. What, in a one or two sentences, would you say to people who will be going through all kinds of evolving issues relating to marriage and things? And what's the one thing that you can tell people who feel they're on a shaky foundation? What can they do to keep holding on to build this stronger thing?
Mm.
We would say get a coach. We would
Mm,
say invest in your marriage, because a lot of things that we are in danger of doing as human beings, even as Christians, is living passively.
Mhm.
Actually, just thinking, this will, everything will just take along. Parenting will take along, marriage will take along, work will take along. No, it's about being deliberate.
mm,
And the fact that there are, even if there are no shaky issues,
Mm.
you can still go and do marriage checkup, or go and excuse me, go and just check the health of your marriage. Look, that there are courses out there for those who have been married, not just those who are about to get married, but those who have been married for years,
Yeah.
to look at how you can enrich your marriage, how to maintain a car that is not maintained will fall apart, no matter how beautiful that car looks at the
Mm.
beginning. So that's why you have to keep maintaining it. You have to keep sprucing it up and revealing the potential. But if you are on there are some shaky areas, even more so,
Mm.
to explore with your spouse, although you don't have to wait for them, as it were.
Yes.
But if possible, with your spouse, to start to look at how you can resolve those issues.
Mm.
One are, you can have coaches like us, but you can also have marriage courses that can be recommended either through your church or Christian organizations. And there is one that we sort of recommend, which is called the marriage course. So yeah, those are things that you can do practically. But the word I'm trying to emphasize is living by design and not
Mm.
not by default.
Yeah.
Really paying attention to those things, drilling down and acting on it.
Yeah.
mm,
Les Brown says that we should, and he's a famous motivational speaker, um, ask for help not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong.
Hmm.
And don't stop until you get it. If you see a crack or some issue and you need to begin to address it, the important thing is that you address it sooner rather than later. Marriage is the only thing that we get into that we say it's for life. We say till death us do part.
Yeah.
You don't give birth to a child and expect that a healthy child will be in with you until they die. You expect them to get older and to move on, but you expect to be attached to this person until one of you all leave this earth. And so you want to have those times as quality,
Yes.
enjoyable time where you're free to be you, you are happy, and your children can see that and learn so that they too could go and replicate what you have taught them.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm getting some comments there before I ask you about your program. Um, Entertaining, refreshing, and illuminating. What a great couple. Yes, indeed. Truly amazing. Awesome. Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, that's from our online chat.
Awesome.
Dr. Soji and Dr. Norva, you've said a lot, and I know that's what we would call the tip of the iceberg. There's so much in there. How can people reach you? I've listened to you, and I'm amazed at the depth of what you're sharing. And I also see the gaps that you both fill, because sometimes in other institutions that are there, maybe the systems don't allow for people to get immersed in certain things, maybe like in church and things like that. So how can you help people? If there's a way, maybe something, then I can probably put it into the description after the program ends in a few minutes. So if you can just tell us very quickly what you have on offer.
Yes, so I suppose what we'll do to just help people to enter our world would be to give you we call it the Wise Wife Manifesto, and that's where those 15 things came from. But even though we use the Wise Wife, it is something that can be used for couples, because it was geared towards wives in the first place, because sometimes you don't, as my husband was saying, you don't wait for your spouse to we must do it together. Sometimes one person could decide that they want to do it. And because when I wrote the book in the Wise Wife Manifesto in the first place, I was just supporting wives. But all of the information you could hear, the 15 things we spoke about, a man or a woman could use it and begin to grow. So we would send that so that at least you could begin to look at it a little bit more, remember those things, and start looking at it. One of the things that we've spoken about as well is the course that we've now finished, I suppose, recording, but we haven't fully packaged it yet. So watch this space. We'll send in for more information about that, and soon we want to actually begin to think about how we can, at a reasonable price, begin to teach groups of people. So maybe having a low cost membership where we get people in, and yeah, we could get people learning from each other as they grow, based on the things that we've learned, we share, but also so that you can share with other people as well what you have learned and what's working for you, so people grow together as couples. Yeah, so yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I know it's going to be so. If just to get this clear, the 15 points you're giving it for free.
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. Thank you from our audience for that. So I'll put the link into it on the chat for the people after the session ends. Interesting, insightful, so many nuggets. Yes, we've all been beneficiaries of this, and please don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody. Even if you're not in a marital situation, you can share it with somebody and let people know about Dr. Soji and Norva Abiona. I want to say thank you to you for joining us tonight as we bring tonight's session to a close. This has been so exciting. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our audience, thank you so much for joining us as well. And please keep sharing, keep subscribing. Thank you.